will be by Sara Ayers-Rigsby with the Florida Public Archaeology Network, and the title of her talk is Before the Everglades, Situating the Archaeology of the Deering Estate within a South Florida context.
Great, thank you so much, Vanessa. Let me make sure, can everyone see my screen and can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, great. So thank you all so much for joining me today. I want to give a huge thank you to Dr. Trujillo for organizing this session. I've really been enjoying everyone's papers today. I'm an archaeologist, I'm not a biologist, so it was really fascinating to learn about all the work that has been done on the estate. So thank you to Vanessa and to Jennifer as well for hosting such an informative symposium. So I want to give a small disclaimer before I start my presentation, which is that I am an archaeologist. I work for the Florida Public Archaeology Network, but I am not the principal investigator on the most recent excavations or any excavations that have taken place on the estate. So I'm going to be presenting information from technical reports prepared by Joe Mankowski of Advanced Archaeology, Jeff Ransom from Miami-Dade County, as well as from Bob Carr, who initially excavated the site. So I'm Sara Ayers-Rigsby. I work for the Florida Public Archaeology Network. What is that? Why are we at the Deering Estate? We are a public education group that is organized by different universities around the state. We're a program of the University of West Florida, and we promote and facilitate conservation, study, and public understanding of Florida's archaeological heritage. So we do this through different ways. We do things like we might assist with an excavation like we did for the Deering Estate, and then help create public events or public products right around that so people can learn more about the archaeology all around them. People often think that archaeology is something that happens only in Greece or Rome, but it's everywhere. It's in your backyard. So we're all about trying to get people out to these archaeological sites. Like I said, we're a program of the University of West Florida, and then we have different partner universities throughout the state. So our region, the Southeast and Southwest region, is hosted by Florida Atlantic University. And our mission is really tripartite. We assist the state, so that's great for the Deering Estate since it's state property that's managed by the county. We assist local governments, and we do education and outreach. So I know we're running a bit behind, so I'm going to go very quickly through about 15,000 years of Florida's history. So hang on, I promise it's going to be scary, but it's going to be scary at first, but I'll be fast. So just to a quick slide about how Florida was geologically formed. Since you all are scientists, I'm sure there are many people on this call that could explain this much better than I could. So we'll just go right through to when the first people are coming to Florida. So people would have been coming to Florida during about 14,000 years ago. So it would have been during a period that was much cooler, right? So Florida would have looked significantly different. It would have been almost twice the width it is now. So I always like to think that you have to imagine a world where like the Keys would have been connected to the mainland still, and it would have been a much drier, cooler environment. So when we think of people moving into Florida, we really have to think of people as the first explorers, right? Before we move on, I've met many people that think I dig up dinosaurs. So if you were really excited to see me talk about dinosaurs for this 15 minutes, I apologize. We're not going to be talking about dinosaurs. As an archaeologist, I'm looking for artifacts. So it's something that's been made or modified by humans, right? As opposed to fossils, right? So I'm not looking typically for things that have been preserved in the Earth's crust. So I apologize, but what I do is pretty cool. So here's just a couple of typical artifacts for South Florida. These are from our teaching collection from the University of Florida. So this is a ceramic, it's called Glades Tools. The camera will focus on it. So it has a fancy fancy edge. And then this is a columella tool. So this is made from a horse conch. But those are some examples of what archaeologists are looking for, right? We're looking at the things people left behind in the past to try and understand a little bit more about their culture. So this is the most widely accepted conventional belief of human settlement into North and South America, right? So people come over from Beringia and settle into North and South America. Why is this relevant to the Deering estate? You'll see in just a second. So the oldest site in Florida is on the Asilla River. It has been dated to 14,550 years ago. So that, as you can see from the little arrows, it's up in the Panhandle Big Bend area. So as so this site is, again, it's the oldest site in Florida. So when people were moving into Florida, freshwater would have been a really limited resource, and it would have been a scrubbier environment. And as I said, people would have been these, we like to think of them as the early explorers, moving around trying to exploit these resources. The animals they would have been looking for and hunting would have been different as well. So we have things like mammoth and the glyptodons and other megafauna. That's really significant because the Deering estate, specifically the Cutler fossil site, is one of the few remaining types of these sites in Florida. So the Deering estate actually has a range of sites spanning the Pleistocene to Custa and early homesteaders in the area. So it has a history that goes from, perhaps as old as 10,000 years ago, right up through the historic period. So the Cutler fossil site is in the Miami Rock Ridge limestone formation and has stratified layers, human and Pleistocene animals found in the same level. And there's also burning on some bones, which could indicate, right, that people are cooking there. And they found animals such as tapirs, horses, American mastodon, which I always think is really cool, dire wolves, saber-toothed cats, everything. And this illustration you see at the bottom is actually visible at History Miami, where they have a lot of the original artifacts from the Cutler fossil site. So if you haven't gone to see that exhibit, because you can't, the Cutler fossil site is typically not accessible to the general public. So I really recommend going to History Miami and seeing some of these artist reconstructions, as well as the actual artifacts that were identified by archaeologists. Here's a few photos of this initial excavation in the 1980s. I love the photo on the bottom left because it looks like it's from, like gold prospecting in the 1820s, but no, this is a 1980s photo of initial excavations of the site. Then on your bottom right, you see, well, there are two photos in the bottom right photo. So it's a side-by-side of the initial excavation as well as what the site looks like today. And we have the Miami-Dade County archaeologist, Jeff Ransom, explaining the site. In the top right hand of your screen, you'll see some of the initial points that were identified. So, points would have been, we call them points instead of arrowheads because they would have been typically attached to spears and thrown from a great distance using a tool called an atlatl. So if you're hunting something that's really big, right, like a mammoth, you don't want to be close to it. You want to be as far away as possible. So we see evidence of people using tools like this. And I really want to note the extraordinary paucity of this type of site type within the state, and really how special it is that sites that are this old remain at the Deering estate because this area has been preserved. I mean, it's incredibly unique, and we're so fortunate to be able to have some knowledge of this site. It's not the only site. There are other sites across the state, like Warm Mineral Springs, which is in Northport, as well as others. After the Paleo-Indian period, we move into the Archaic period, which is when obviously sea levels begin to rise. Florida takes on its modern climate. We start to see more modern animals, and we start to see long-term and seasonal campsites within the Everglades. And we really see a very heavy exploitation of tree islands within the Everglades. Following this, we have it can be known as different things. Typically here in Florida, we refer to it as the Glades period here in South Florida. But there's also, if you were in a different part of the country, you might have heard it referred to as the Woodland Period as well. So during this period, what we see in Florida is increasingly complex societies, but one of the very unusual things about South Florida is that we don't see agriculture in the same way we do in other areas, so in the Midwest and other parts of the country. So we have these incredibly complex societies that are building very significant earthworks, shellworks, and things of that nature without agriculture. And it's pretty cool. There are scientists or archaeologists and anthropologists who work with groups in Southern California who have similar social structures, maybe without farming, and they coordinate sometimes with Florida archaeologists to study what was going on here. So I think that's fascinating. So many of the pre-contact sites that we see at the Deering Estate, including one that was excavated extensively during the Phase 2 DA7, date to this Glades period. So this is the time essentially right before the Spanish come. So we have different groups throughout Florida. The Tequesta are what we traditionally refer to as the group who are living in the vicinity of the Deering Estate and in Southeast Florida. But I always like to tell people we are using Spanish records, so we don't actually know what people would have called themselves. And the Spanish just kind of called everyone after their leaders. So it would be like if we were all called like Bidenarians or something like that instead of Americans. So just something to keep in mind. Spanish contact, of course, in 1513. And then Native people experienced pretty rapid cultural change and were largely decimated, unfortunately, by European explorers. However, obviously, I like to tell people sometimes we have this sense that Native Americans, it's like Europeans came and killed everyone and no one was left. And that's obviously not the case at all. So I encourage people to go learn more about indigenous Floridians at the Ata Tiki Museum on the Big Cypress Reservation, right? Because people are still here. So when we talk about recent archaeological work at the Deering Estate, so as I said, the Phase 2 archaeological survey, which wrapped up, I believe the report was finished in the first quarter, right? Jennifer said this morning. So this was conducted by Advanced Archaeology in Miami-Dade County. There's my colleague, Mal Fenn. She's in a solution hole on the property, documenting that. So according to this report prepared by Mankowski, the Phase 2 investigation resulted in the first in-depth documentation of a number of sites ranging from the late Pleistocene throughout the Glades period to the historic period. All sites represent some of the last surviving examples of coastal prehistoric and/or paleontological sites in South Florida. And DA7 is a rare example of a large prehistoric or pre-contact village, predominantly dating to the Tequesta Indian culture, which also contains unique first Spanish period deposits, most likely associated with a shipwrecking salvage encampment. So 2 of the sites identified are among the largest documented pre-contact sites in Southeast Florida, and 3 of the sites documented are some of the only known sinkhole cave sites of their kind in South Florida and offer important information for the analysis of paleontological remains, the Pleistocene epoch environment, and understanding Aboriginal practices. So the report, the technical report, really highlights that this one place essentially tells the entire story of Florida over thousands of years of human occupation, right? So we were fortunate enough at FPAN to be able to go out and work on some of these sites, some of these solution hole sites that are in the Pine Rockland area. So here is one, this is Cutler Fossil 2. So this is not the Cutler Fossil site from the beginning where I showed you all the photographs from the 80s. This is another smaller site. And in this site, things like dire wolf teeth and llama camel teeth were discovered. So that's Pleistocene and Holocene era animal bones, which is fascinating. For me as an archaeologist, it's maybe not quite as exciting as if we had found a stronger indicator of human activity, but it's still an incredible resource. And then here is the site later. Here we are following excavation. So this unit was excavated down to about 140 centimeters. And there's my colleague actually drawing it. So you can kind of see here we are, starting the initial work. And there it is at the end of its excavation. This is another site. This is Raccoon Pits. So in this site, a potential shell hammer was identified. So maybe something that would have initially been something like this initially. So when we think about the archaeology of the Darien Estate, it's an invaluable way to tell the story of Florida's history, right? As archaeologists, we're not just focusing on the artifact, we're really thinking about the story we can tell through these sites. Why are people settling in these areas? Why are they moving why are they moving around? What were they doing? What were they interested in? It's kind of like if I had to tell the entire story of your life and all I had was your trash, it would be incredibly challenging, right? So we're trying to recreate the past through these sites. So having, there is so much we would miss out on, and so much information would be lost if we did not have the preservation level we have at Darien Estate through the actions of individuals over the years that have preserved it. So I'm extraordinarily grateful to everyone. And I'm just going to end with this quote. So this is from a Seminole woman. She says that what my grandmother was really adamant about was that I was never to forget how we got to be on Earth today because of the sacrifices that our ancestors made. So as archaeologists, we're trying to tell people's stories through the things they left behind and trying to shed light on our universal past. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Sarah. We have time for a couple of questions. If anyone would like to ask Sarah, please unmute yourself.
If I could say that was so good, I really appreciated your presentation. And when is this all going to be released? I know we've been looking forward to the final public opening of the study. Is this soon or?
Becky, and so Sarah, I'll jump in here.
Yeah, please.
Yeah, Becky, as I mentioned in my comments earlier today, I think that there's the curating this narrative is very hard. We've had conversations amongst ourselves that we've all shared, and that is that when you're authoring the public voice on this, we are also very sensitive to who should be carrying that voice and what perspective that voice is taking. So we're really, I think what we've been trying to do was to, and this takes time. This is not a bureaucratic answer, but this is also about what I'm going to say, environmental justice and how you look at intersectionality of voice. Is we're trying to present the science perspective of this in the public narrative and present as many voices and as diverse a voice, while it has been a group of, and I'm kind of mincing words here, but while it's been a group of scientists who've really been active on this site for a long time. In short, it's really hard to curate, and we don't want to curate a Native American voice on habitation of this area on sort of the first peoples from a white perspective. is just to be very blunt. And so navigating how you share science and study without taking that voice from others, but representing the work that's been done has been it's been a challenge from a project management standpoint. We're very sensitive to it. So that's it. I'm thinking at this point, and we've pulled some academics in on the public document this semester who are advising me, so that we're hoping that we're looking at we have a first draft, but we're looking at a better draft some end of spring, early summer.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Becky. Jennifer, any other questions for Sara?